is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods. For thousands of years, the stories of the Bible have been told and retold. Great scholars have studied them, and children all over the world have loved them. The Bible has been translated into practically every language known to man. In fact, there have been more Bibles printed than any other book ever written. Here now are some of the great stories from the Bible for you to listen to. You will hear about the righteous men who walked with God and loved him, of brave men who led the Lord's people to victory over their enemies, of fearless women who served the Lord faithfully. The first of these righteous men is Noah, a man chosen by God to live through the days and nights of the great flood which covered the earth. In the early days of the world, the hearts of men had grown hard and full of wickedness. Men turned from the ways of the Lord, and the Lord, seeing these things, was displeased. I shall destroy every living thing I have made, said the Lord, and man which I have created. Every living thing on the face of the earth shall I wipe out, for man is evil in my sight. But there was one man who remembered the ways of the Lord. Noah and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, rejoiced in the Lord, and their prayers were heard in heaven. And so the Lord spoke to Noah, saying, In my wrath shall I destroy every living thing, but you of all men have found favor in my eyes. Therefore I will spare you and your children. Build of stout wood from the forests an ark, a boat to float upon the water, for I shall cover the earth with a great flood of waters. Into the ark shall you gather 2 of every living creature, every beast, and everything that creeps and crawls on the land and flies in the air, both male and female. Take also into the ark food of every kind, so that you all may eat while the waters cover the land. And Noah did as the Lord had commanded. Of sweet oleander wood did he and his sons build the ark. Then he gathered together everything that did he gather into the ark. Also food of every kind did he put in the ark. And when the rains came, Noah and his sons and their wives went up into the ark, and Noah closed the great door against the waters. Then the Lord caused the rains to fall. The windows of heaven opened up, and the fountains of the deep were broken. For 40 days and 40 nights did the flood descend, and the earth was covered even to the tops of high hills and mountains. Every living thing on the earth was destroyed, and the waters remained upon the earth for 150 days. Then the Lord remembered Noah, and he caused a wind to pass over the waters, and the flood began to go down. For 150 days the waters went down, and in the 7th month the ark rested upon the mountain of Ararat. Then Noah opened the window of the ark and sent forth a dove to see if the waters had left the face of the earth. But the dove returned, for she found no place to rest the sole of her foot. For 7 days Noah waited. Then he sent forth the dove again, and in the evening she returned with a green olive leaf. Again for 7 days did Noah wait, and once more he opened the window of the ark and sent forth the dove. But in the evening she did not return. And so at last Noah knew that the waters had left the face of the earth. And when he opened the great doors of the ark and looked out, behold, the land was dry. Then out from the ark went every living thing, every beast, and the birds of the air. Noah built an altar and offered burnt sacrifices and praise to the Lord, who had delivered him from destruction. When this was done, the Lord spoke to Noah and his sons, saying, Behold, I establish a covenant, a promise, with you and your children and your children's children unto the end of the earth, and with all living creatures, the birds, the cattle, and every beast that creeps or crawls. Never again in my anger shall I cover the earth with a flood, nor shall the earth be destroyed by the waters of heaven. In the clouds shall I set my rainbow, and it shall be the symbol of my promise. Whenever I shall bring clouds over the earth, the rainbow will appear, and then shall I remember my promise to you, and the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all living things. Abraham was the first great leader of the Hebrew people. In the days when men worshipped many gods, it was Abraham who led his people in the ways of the one God of heaven and earth. There lived in the city of Haran in the land of Ur a man named Abram. Now the people of Haran had many gods. They made idols of their gods and they worshipped them. But Abram loved and feared the one Lord God with all his heart. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said, Leave your land, your relatives, and your father's home, for a land I will show you. I will make you the founder of a great nation, and I will make your name great among men. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you. And Abram did as the Lord commanded. With his wife, Sarai, and his herds of cattle and camels, he set out for the land of Canaan, which the Lord had promised to him and his descendants. The years passed, and Abram prospered in the sight of the Lord. His flocks increased, and also his cattle, but his wife could bear him no children. Then the Lord appeared again to Abram and said, Look to the sky and count the stars if you can. To such a number shall your children's children be, even to the end of time. And your name shall henceforth be Abraham, which means father of multitudes, and your wife shall be called Sarah, for she will be the mother of nations. And it came to pass that 3 men appeared at Abraham's tent. They were strangers, but Abraham knew in his heart that they were angels of the Lord. And so Abraham brought forth water that they might be refreshed in the heat of the day, and he commanded that a meal be prepared for them. While they ate and rested in the shade of a tree, one of the men inquired, Where is Sarah, your wife? And Abraham said, Yonder she stands, in the tent. And the man replied, Lo, she shall bear you a son. Now, Sarah was listening inside the tent, and she laughed and said, How indeed shall I bear a son, for I am so old? Then the Lord said to Abraham, Why does Sarah laugh and say, How can I bear a child when I am so old? Is anything too wonderful for the Lord to perform? Then it was as the Lord had said, and in her old age Sarah bore a son for Abraham. And the child was named Isaac, which means laughter. Thus, through his son Isaac, and Isaac's sons and grandsons, even to the ends of time, did Abraham become the father of multitudes, and Sarah the mother of nations. In the days when Isaac lived, it was the custom for the fathers to select wives for their sons. Now, since Abraham was a very old man by the time Isaac was ready to marry, he entrusted a faithful servant with the task. This, then, is the story of how Isaac's marriage came about. The years passed, and Isaac grew to manhood. Now that Abraham was old, and having been blessed in all things by the Lord, he desired to have his son married to one of his own people, and not to a Canaanite among whom they dwelt. He commanded his oldest and most trusted servant to come before him, saying, "I would have my son marry one of his own people. Go then to the land of my fathers and pick a worthy bride for my son Isaac." And the servant answered, "But what if the woman chooses not to follow me back to this country? Should I then take your son back to the land from which you came?" Then Abraham said to him, "Swear that you will never take my son there. This is the land which the Lord God has given to me and my children's children, and here shall they live forever. The angel of the Lord shall guide your footsteps, so have no fear." Then the servant gathered together camels for the journey, and gifts of fine gold, and treasures for the bride, and he departed for the land of Abraham's people. When he arrived before the city of Nahor, it being evening, he stopped beside a well of water, and it was the time when the women of the city came to the well to draw water. The servant of Abraham prayed to God, saying, "Now are the women come to draw water. To one I shall say, 'Let down your pitcher that I may drink.' And if she be the wife you have chosen for Isaac, let her reply, 'Drink as you desire, and let me water your camels as well.' Then will I know that you look with favor upon my choice, and that you have shown kindness to my master Abraham." When he had finished praying, there appeared Rebekah, whose father was the son of Nahor, Abraham's brother. She was beautiful to behold, and when she had filled her pitcher, the servant approached and said, "Let down your pitcher that I may drink." "Drink, sir, as you desire," she replied to him, "and let me draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking." The servant said nothing until the camels had finished. Then he offered Rebekah golden earrings and 2 bracelets. "Whose daughter are you?" he asked, "and is there room in your father's house for me and my camels?" And when she had told him her father's name, saying also, "We have both fodder for your camels and room for you at our house," the servant praised God in his heart, for he knew he had chosen correctly. Then the girl ran to her home and told of what had happened, and her brother Laban returned to the well so that he might bring the servant to his house. But when food was set before the servant, he said, "I will not eat until I tell my story. I am the servant of Abraham, whom the Lord has blessed. Both flocks and herds does he have, silver and gold, also camels and many servants. Isaac is the son of his old age, and for love of his son he has given him all his riches." And the servant told of how Abraham had sent him to find a bride for Isaac, and how the Lord had led him to Rebekah. Then Laban answered, saying, "This is how it was planned by the Lord. Here is Rebekah, take her and go. Let her be the wife of your master's son, even as the Lord has said." And so it was that the servant brought Rebekah back into the land of Canaan for the wife of Isaac. One of the sons of Isaac and Rebekah was Jacob, whose name the Lord changed to Israel. Jacob had 12 sons, and from them came the 12 tribes of Israel. This is the story of Joseph, Jacob's favorite son, and what happened between him and his other brothers. Now there was in those days a boy named Joseph, the beloved son of his father Jacob. His 10 older brothers were jealous when they saw their father favor Joseph over them, and they could not say a good word for the boy. One night, Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him more. And he told them, "I dreamed we were binding sheaves of grain in the field, and your sheaves gathered round mine and bowed down to it." Then Joseph had another dream, and he told his brothers, I dreamed that the sun and moon and 11 stars bowed down to me. And the brothers hated Joseph in their hearts and said, Is he indeed to be our ruler, and are we to bow down to him? Now Jacob their father was troubled by all this, but still he loved his son greatly, and so he gave him a long cloak of many colors to show his love. And the brothers hated Joseph in their hearts. It came to pass that the brothers were in a far-off place tending their flocks of sheep, and Jacob sent Joseph to inquire after his brothers. And when the brothers saw Joseph approach, wearing his many-colored cloak, they plotted to kill him, and then tell their father that a wild beast had devoured his son. But when they seized Joseph and threw him in a pit to die, a caravan passed by on its way to Egypt. One of the brothers, seeing the caravan, said, Let us not leave Joseph in the pit, but sell him as a slave to the traders, so that they may take him down to Egypt. And so it was. The brothers sold Joseph for 20 pieces of silver, then dipped his cloak in the blood of a kid to show their father that Joseph had been devoured by wild beasts, and Jacob was bowed with grief. Then at last the caravan arrived in Egypt, and the traders sold Joseph to a man named Potiphar, and he served his master well. But in time, Joseph was unjustly charged with a crime and thrown in prison. Now it happened that the butler and the baker of the king Pharaoh of Egypt offended the Pharaoh, and they were thrown into the prison with Joseph. One night, each of the men had a strange dream, and Joseph interpreted the dreams for them, saying that in 3 days the butler would be returned to the palace to serve the Pharaoh, but the baker would be condemned to death. And so it was. But the butler forgot Joseph when he returned to the palace. Then it came to pass that the Pharaoh had 2 dreams, and all the wise men of Egypt could not explain the dreams to their king. The butler, now remembering Joseph, said to the Pharaoh that a young Israelite in prison had the power to interpret dreams. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph and told him thus, I dreamed that 7 fat cows came out of the river Nile and were followed by 7 lean cows who ate up the 7 fat cows. Then I dreamed further that 7 good ears of corn grew upon a stalk and were followed by 7 lean ears blasted by the east wind, and the 7 lean ears devoured the 7 fat ears. Joseph answered the Pharaoh, saying, God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 fat cows and the 7 good ears are 7 years of plenty, and the 7 lean cows and the 7 lean ears are 7 years of famine, when no food will grow in the land. Therefore, let Pharaoh appoint a man to gather up the grain for 7 years and store it away, so that when the years of famine come, there will be food in Egypt. And God moved the heart of the Pharaoh so that he said, Behold, I make you my chief steward, second in power only to me. You shall gather up the grain for 7 years and store it away against the years of famine. And it was as Joseph had said. For 7 years the crops were abundant, and Joseph gathered grain as the sand of the sea. Then began the 7 years of famine. The famine was all over the land, even to the land of Canaan, where dwelt Jacob and his sons. Now Jacob heard that there was food in Egypt, so he sent his 10 sons forth to buy food so that they might live. When Joseph's brothers came before him, he recognized them, but they knew him not. He inquired after their father and learned that he still lived, and also that his younger brother Benjamin was at home with Jacob. Then Joseph sent his brothers back to Canaan laden with grain, but he kept his brother Gideon in Egypt, saying that when they returned again for food, they were to bring Benjamin with them, and he would then release Gideon. And so the brothers went back to the land of Canaan and told their father what had happened. At last the day came when the grain was gone, and once more Jacob ordered his sons to travel to Egypt for food. When they reminded their father that Benjamin must go with them, his heart was heavy with sorrow, but the need for food was very great, and Jacob released his beloved son to them. Now, when they arrived in Egypt and appeared before Joseph, he still did not reveal himself to them. He set a great feast in front of them, showing special favor for his younger brother Benjamin. But when the feast was finished and the donkeys were loaded with grain, Joseph secretly ordered his butler to put his own silver cup in the sack of grain belonging to Benjamin. Scarcely had the brothers left on their journey home when the butler ran after them, saying, "One of you has stolen my master's silver cup, and he demands that the thief become his slave." Then were the sacks of grain opened up, and behold, the cup was in Benjamin's sack. Now were the brothers greatly troubled, and they threw themselves on Joseph's mercy, saying that it would indeed kill their father should they return without their youngest brother. Then at last did Joseph weep, and he revealed himself to his brothers, telling them that he it was they had sold into slavery. And Joseph forgave his brothers and commanded that his father Jacob and all his family be brought to live in Egypt, so that they might have food for all of their days. For many years the Israelites were welcome in Egypt, but in time the Egyptians turned on them and made them slaves. Moses was the man appointed by God to free his people and lead them back to the promised land of Canaan. So it was that the Israelites lived in Egypt and prospered, but a new Pharaoh came to the throne, and he feared the Israelites and the strength which the Lord had given them. Therefore, he commanded they become slaves of the Egyptians, and so it was. But one mother, fearing that her son would grow up a slave, set him to float on the river Nile in a raft of rushes. Here he was found by the Pharaoh's daughter, who took pity on the babe. She ordered that he be raised as an Egyptian, and she named him Moses, which means drawn from the water. When he was grown to manhood, Moses came upon an Egyptian beating an Israelite slave, and in his anger Moses killed him. Then, for fear of punishment, he fled from the land of Egypt. But the Lord was with Moses, and he appeared before him in a burning bush, which was not eaten up by the flames. And the Lord commanded Moses, telling him to return to Egypt, so that he might lead his people back to the land of Canaan. But Moses trembled before the Lord, saying, "How shall I make great Pharaoh release my people?" And the Lord gave Moses a sign, turning his staff into a serpent in the wilderness. Then Moses went before Pharaoh, demanding that the children of Israel be free to return to the promised land. But the heart of the Pharaoh was hard, and he would not heed the words of Moses. Therefore the Lord sent plagues to the land of Egypt, causing frogs to rain down, and the waters to turn to blood, and locusts to overrun the land. But the heart of the Pharaoh was hard. Then the angel of the Lord warned the Israelites, telling them to paint their doors with the blood of a lamb. Then in the night the angel of death took unto himself the firstborn child of every one in the land. But he passed over the doors of the Israelites, which were marked with the blood of the lamb. Now did Pharaoh relent in his heart, for his firstborn son also had been slain, and he ordered that the Israelites be free to leave the land of Egypt. But once they were gone, he pursued them with warriors in chariots. "Now indeed we are lost," cried the Israelites. "Better that we had lived in Egypt as slaves than die here in the wilderness." But Moses struck the waters of the sea with his staff, and the waters drew back, that the Israelites might pass safely out of Egypt. And when Pharaoh rode after them, the waters came together with a great rush, and the Egyptians were drowned. Thus Moses led his people toward the land of Canaan, and the Lord traveled before them as a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And the Lord fed his people with manna, which fell from heaven, so that the Israelites might not die in the wilderness. After freeing the Israelites from slavery, Moses continued to be their leader. Through Moses, God gave his 10 commandments to them. But the Israelites displeased God by doing wicked things, and so he made them wander for many years before they at last came back to the promised land of Canaan. And so it happened that the Lord led the children of Israel near to the Mount of Sinai. Here the Lord commanded Moses to go up into the mountain so that he might speak to him alone. For 40 days and 40 nights Moses stayed upon Mount Sinai, and the Lord gave to him his 10 commandments, written on stone by the finger of God. And these were the commandments of God. I am the Lord your God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make any images or idols, nor bow down and worship them. Thou shalt not use the name of the Lord for evil purpose. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bring false charges against your fellow man. Thou shalt not covet that which is not yours. But meantime the Israelites became impatient, and they felt that their God and Moses had left them. Therefore they commanded Aaron, who was one of the leaders with Moses, to make for them a god that they could worship. All their gold ornaments and gold earrings did they give to Aaron, and he made a golden calf for a god. Then was the time for Moses to come down from the heights of the mountain, and when he saw the Israelites worshipping the golden calf, in his anger he smote the ground with the tablets of the law, and he destroyed also the golden image, and the people trembled with fear of him. Now was the Lord prepared to wipe out his people, for they had vexed him beyond all reason. But Moses spoke to the Lord, reminding him of his promise to Abraham and to Jacob, and Moses pleaded that the Israelites be spared. Then the Lord relented his anger, and he sent his people on their way to the land of Canaan with one of his angels to lead them. For 40 years did the children of Israel wander in the wilderness before they could enter the promised land, for they had angered the Lord their God. And when the days of Moses were drawing to an end, he called to a man named Joshua, called him to his side, and gave him his blessing, commanding him to lead the Lord's people into the land of Canaan. Now in the city of Jericho, in the land of Canaan, the people had closed themselves up, for they were afraid of the Israelites. And the Israelites marched on the city to capture it, and the land of milk and honey for themselves, as the Lord had promised. But Jericho was a strong fortress, and the Canaanites were secure behind its walls. Joshua commanded that the Israelites march around the walls of Jericho for 7 days, while the priests of the Lord blew upon their trumpets of ram's horns. Then, on the 7th day, with one voice, the Israelites gave a great shout, and the walls of Jericho crumbled before them. And in such a manner did the Lord bring his children into the promised land. While much of the Bible tells the history of the Hebrew people, their seeking after God and their victories and defeats, there are also stories that do no more than tell of man's faith and trust in God and of God's goodness to man. Such is the story of Samson, of Shadrack, Meshack, and Abednego, and the story of Ruth and Naomi. There was among the Hebrews a man stronger than any man alive, named Samson, whom the Lord favored. The Lord commanded Samson never to cut his hair, for therein lay his great strength. So strong was Samson that with his bare hands he killed a lion, and with the jawbone of an ass he slew 1,000 of the Philistines who were his enemies. Now Samson loved a woman named Delilah, and the Philistines came to her and offered her a great sum of money if she could find out the reason for Samson's great strength. Therefore, to test his love for her, Delilah demanded to know of Samson what made him so strong. First, Samson permitted her to bind him with green willow stems, saying that he would then be as weak as any other man. But when she had bound him up, Samson at once broke free. Then he told her that should he be bound with new ropes that had never been used before, he would be as weak as any other man. But when he permitted Delilah to bind him thus, he at once broke through them like spider gauze. And so he teased with her. But when he saw at last that she was determined to test his love for her, Samson told her of the Lord's command that he never allow his hair to be cut. Lulling him to sleep, Delilah sent for the Philistines, and they shaved off the 7 locks of Samson's hair. She then awakened him, saying, "The Philistines are upon you." And when he rose up, his strength was like that of a child's, and they seized him and put out his eyes and condemned him to work at Gaza in the mill with slaves. Then did the Philistines glory in their triumph over Samson. And it came to pass that in time the hairs once more sprouted and grew on Samson's head. But the Philistines in their triumph did not heed it. Therefore, on a day of great celebration to their god Dagon, the Philistines cried, "Let us bring Samson to the temple, that we might mock him before our God." And so, when Samson was fetched from the mill and brought into the temple, he spoke to the child who was leading him, saying, "Place me between the pillars which support the roof, so that I may rest against them, for I am tired from my labors." Then, when the Philistines mocked Samson and the God of Israel, Samson put his arms about the pillars and prayed to the Lord and said, "Remember me, O Lord God, and the days of my strength. Strengthen me again, that I may take revenge on my enemies for my 2 eyes." Then Samson bowed himself with all his might and drew together the pillars of the temple with his arms, and the roof of the temple crashed down upon the worshippers of Dagon, and the number that he killed at his death was greater than all that he had killed in his life. At the time when the Babylonians ruled over the children of Israel, there was a king named Nebuchadnezzar. He caused to be made a statue of gold 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. Then he gathered together all the princes and governors, the captains and judges of his kingdom, to see the golden statue that had been set up. And he decreed that when the harp and flute, the cornet and dulcimer, and all manner of music should sound, everyone was to bow down to the image and worship it. All those who did not heed the command were to be thrown into a fiery furnace. So it was that when the music sounded, everyone bowed down to the golden image and worshipped it. But there were 3 Jews among the people, named Shadrack, Meshack, and Abednego, who would not bow down nor serve the image. And word was brought to Nebuchadnezzar that such was the case. Then in his fury he commanded that Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego be brought before him. The king questioned the 3 men, saying, "Is it true that you serve not my gods, nor worship the golden image? I charge you, bow down to the image when you hear the sound of the harp and flute, the cornet and dulcimer, and all will be well. If not, you will be thrown this very hour into the middle of a burning furnace, and who is the God who will deliver you?" Then Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego answered the king thus, "We do not need to think of our answer. If it be his will, our God whom we serve will deliver us from the furnace and from your hands. But if it is not his will, we still will not serve your gods, O king, nor worship your golden image." Now was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and he ordered the furnace made so hot that the men who led Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego into it were struck dead by its heat, and the 3 Jews were cast into the flames. Then was the king astonished, for upon looking into the furnace he saw not 3 men, but 4 men walking about in the flames, and the 4th man was the angel of the Lord. Oh, the heart of Abednego was moved, and he called Shadrach, Meshack, Abednego forth from the furnace, and behold, not a hair of their heads was singed, nor were their clothes burned, and there was no smell of fire about them. Then Nebuchadnezzar spoke before his people and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego, who has sent his angel to save them from the fire. Therefore I decree that any man who shall say anything against this God shall be cut to pieces, and his house shall become a dumping ground." And Shadrach, Meshack, and Abednego found favor in the eyes of the king, and they were given positions of high honor in the kingdom of Babylon. It happened in the days when the judges ruled Israel that there was a famine in the land. A certain man named Elimelech, who lived in Bethlehem, left with his wife Naomi and their 2 sons to live in the country of Moab, because there was food in that land. In time, Elimelech died, and his 2 sons took wives who were named Orpah and Ruth, and these women were of the country of Moab. Then it came to pass that the 2 sons died, and Naomi was alone in a land, a strange land, with her daughters-in-law. She arose to return to her own country, for she had heard that there was once more food in the land of Judah. Orpah and Ruth started out with Naomi to see that she was well started on her journey. At last it was the time for them to part, and Naomi spoke to her daughters-in-law, saying, "Return now, each of you, to your mother's house, and may the Lord be as kind to you as you have been to me." Then the women wept together, and Orpah returned to her mother's house. But Ruth clung to Naomi and said, "Do not ask me to leave you. Wherever you go, I shall go. Where you stop, there shall I stop also. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God." And Naomi, seeing that she could not prevail upon Ruth to go back, took her with her to her home in Bethlehem. It was the time of the barley harvest, and Ruth said, "Let me go into the fields that I may follow after the reapers and glean the ears of grain that they have passed over. In this way we shall have food to eat." And it happened that Ruth was gleaning in the field that belonged to a wealthy kinsman of Naomi, named Boaz. Now, when Boaz saw Ruth, he inquired of his servants as to who she was, and the servant replied that she was Ruth, who had returned with Naomi from the country of Moab. Then Boaz spoke to Ruth, for she had found favor in his eyes, and he told her that she might glean freely from his fields and drink the water from his well. And he instructed his servants to let her glean among the sheaves of gathered barley, and to let her fall grain on the ground, so that she might find enough. When Ruth returned that night to Naomi, she told her what had passed between her and Boaz, and Naomi was joyful, for Boaz was a kinsman. So it was throughout the barley harvest and the wheat harvest, and Ruth gleaned every day with the maidservants of Boaz. Then, when the harvest was done, Boaz went before the elders of the city and declared his desire to take Ruth for his wife, and the elders blessed the marriage. And the son of Ruth and Boaz was Obed, and his son was Jesse, the father of David. One of the greatest kings of Israel was David. He was a simple shepherd boy who loved the Lord, and God chose him to be the ruler over the Israelites. The lovely poems, which we call the Psalms, are supposed to have been written by King David. The story of how David, the shepherd boy, killed the mighty giant Goliath is one of the most famous stories in the Bible. Now, at the time when Saul was king of the Israelites, their enemies, the Philistines, had gathered together a great army to do battle against Israel. Therefore, Saul drew up his army of soldiers that they might defend their people. But there was with the Philistines a mighty man, a giant of 9 feet and 9 inches, named Goliath, and all the Israelites feared him greatly in their hearts, for he was such a mighty warrior. And when the armies were drawn up together to do battle, Goliath came forth and taunted the Israelites, saying, "Send me your bravest soldier, and let him fight with me alone. If he shall kill me, then we shall be your slaves. But should I kill him, then shall you become our slaves." Well, when King Saul and his men heard these words, their fear was very great, for there was no man among them who was brave enough to fight with Goliath. And every morning and every evening for 40 days, Goliath taunted the Israelites. Meantime, a shepherd boy named David was at home tending the sheep of his father Jesse, while his 3 brothers were with the army of King Saul. Now Jesse said to his son, "Take this food to the camp of King Saul, and seek out your brothers so that they may eat it." And David did as his father commanded. Then it came to pass that while David was walking to his brothers, Goliath came forth and again challenged the Israelites to fight him. And David said, "Who is this heathen Philistine that he should taunt the army of the living God?" But his brothers gave him no heed, saying that he should be home tending his father's sheep. Then it happened that his words were repeated to King Saul, and the king sent for the boy so that he might speak to him. David answered the king and said, "Be not afraid, for I will fight this Philistine. He has challenged the armies of the living God, and the Lord who has protected me all my life will watch over me now when I do battle with Goliath." Then did Saul give the boy his blessing, and David was girded up with the armor of war. but it weighed heavily upon his shoulders. So he went forth to meet Goliath, clad only in his shepherd's tunic, and armed with a sling and 5 smooth pebbles out of the brook. Now when Goliath saw the boy approach, he scorned him and said, "Am I a dog that you come to fight me with sticks?" And David answered, "You come forth armed with a sword and a spear and a shield of shining brass, but I am armed with the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel." Then, as the Philistine rose up to strike him down, David fitted a pebble in his shepherd's sling and hurled it at Goliath. And the stone struck Goliath in the forehead and sunk in deep, so that he fell dead upon his face. In such a manner did David triumph over the enemy of the Lord, and with Goliath's own sword did he cut off the head and hold it up for all to see. And great was the triumph of the army of the Lord's people over their enemies. Make a joyful noise unto the Lord, all ye lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before his presence with singing. Know ye that the Lord, he is God. It is he that hath made us, and not we ourselves. We are his people, and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, and into his courts with praise. Be thankful unto him, and bless his name. For the Lord is good, his mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth to all generations.